don't know what's on that. Right. You wouldn't believe when I got another notice from Ken after talking to you that night.
All right.
And then I got 2 certificates of compliance that wanted to be done. Because we have to write up all the orders. Especially for the solar project. Can you imagine how big those orders are going to have to be?
So that's the, you have one.
We have that one, and we have the rating, hydro rating, my acres. We've got the dam removal for DCR, and I don't trust them with anything.
What dam?
Parker Brook, over on the rail trail. Well, I don't trust them with anything. Last time they tried.
Yeah. You still need contact for the They were just waiting for me to leave.
I guess they must have been.
Yeah, I got an email. Jeannie's stuff. So I got a fine. Yeah, last night there was a finance meeting. There was a young man waiting for the conservation meeting to start. He went out and checked the board. We're next week. We're a week early.
He didn't go last month, that's why.
That's what he said.
And I don't have his number because they only live off cell phones. I lose cell phone numbers like nothing. Oh, and then Paul Lockwood is doing the retreat lot off of North Brookfield Road. 700 foot driveway. Three wetlands. Buffers. I read the whole thing. They're not going to hear from me for like 2 months. I don't care if I had 21 days. They're still working on the paperwork to get ready for the next 20 But anytime you want to come back.
Aren't you full? Or you still have one seat open? You're full?
So we always put it in an alternate. I thought about Roger last night. I thought, what's he wearing?
Yep, she did. He sat with us for a little while. And then I went outside and checked the room. October 10th.
Looking at us?
FinCom.
Because I know I didn't see it.
Nothing for selecting. It looks like we may not meet next week. So. We'll see. We'll be back to we'll be up here on Wednesday for the opening of the special. And then we'll schedule.
If you have a meeting tomorrow.
It was an executive session regardless, so we couldn't have joined. So we just had that special. How you doing? Summer one.
And then it'll start coming back. That's what I was on. Yeah, at least you want to hear what it does. I don't want to third bag.
Yeah, that wouldn't be good. I've always seen that. Maureen, Sheila, you?
Should invite him to the next meeting.
I was a former school committee member from.
Well, then I was.
Glenn, have some seats if you'd like.
Sure, you point and I'll sit.
Sure, right? How about right?
Then I will sit. Okay, thanks.
You know if Dick's gonna make it today? How about Bill? No, okay. Talk amongst yourselves, we still have a minute.
3 seconds.
All right, well, thank you. Okay, well, I will call the meeting to order, and this is a joint meeting with the task force and the full committee, but mainly it's the task force meeting, so that I will turn it over to Dave for basic introductions, etc.
Hi, I'm Dave Deschamps. I'm the co-chair of the task force, and I just thought we've been doing this now for 2 years. Last month we started in September.
I don't think you should have said that.
And it's been quite an educational process. What I'd like to do first is probably go around the table and people have them introduce themselves here, and people in the audience do the same, so we get a sense of who we are and where we're all from. Again, I'm Dave Deschamps. I'm a school committee member from Barry.
Sure. Debbie Chamberlain, School Committee for Hubbardston.
That's around your Hardwick.
Peggy Thompson, New Braintree.
Ms. Bennett, School Committee Secretary.
Lee Willan and Barry.
Lori Marshall, Superintendent.
Sheila Muir, Assistant Superintendent.
Cheryl Duval, Director of Administrative Services.
Jeff Spear, Hardwick. Walter Nutter, Ocam.
Glenn Eaton, monitors the Regional Planning Commission.
Mark Lewis, School Committee, Hubbardston.
Dave Marsh, Barry.
Janet Pierce, Central Mass Regional Planning Commission.
Trish Ellis, CMRPC.
Brian Bullock, Town of Hubbardston. Dan Glendy, Town of Hubbardston, Select Board.
Liz Tony, Town of Hardwick.
Joe Chenoweth, New Braintree Select Board.
Claire Henshaw, Finance Committee, okay.
Lucy Chestnut, Council on Aging, Conservation Commission, and Historical Commission, Ocam.
Maybe we can go across to the audience. Maybe start with you, sir.
Mark Rocha.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Mark Brophy, School Committee member, Barry.
Mark, you should have never given up the chair.
I'm sorry.
It's all right.
I'm sorry again, please.
Connor Robichaud, CMRPC.
Brad Minor, TNG.
Ellie Downer, Barry Gazette.
Paul Rochette, Ocam Finance.
Steve Labar, Ocam Select Board.
Teresa Kofsky, Hardwick Town Administrator.
Keenan Young, Board of Selectmen, Hardwick.
Kelly Allen, Board of Selectmen, Hardwick. Cheryl Wolf, Hardwick Finance.
Okay. Well, welcome all. Just briefly, a quick synopsis. The first year, the 5 communities engaged in a community compact grant, and we contracted with the Collins Center from UMass Boston. They did an initial data gathering. They made some recommendations, and late last spring, early this summer, the task force and along with the communities decided that we were going to move to a different approach, and we decided that we were going to contract with the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission and move this forward. What we have is some very valuable data that the Collins Center had given us, and they gave us some recommendations to work on. Janet's going to review them this evening, and we're going to see where we're going to go from there. But it's I think that the key thing is that the big transition in my mind is that we move from a school-based issue now to a more of a community-based issue and maybe a regional-based issue. And I think it's going to open up some areas of conversation and some thought that we may not have thought about in the past. So with that said, I'm going to pass it on to Janet Pierce, who is the Director of the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks, Lee. Thanks, everyone, for inviting us here, coordinating the meeting, Gus, and thanks, everyone, for showing up. Our valued members of the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission, and also Glenn is the Executive Director of the Montechusett Regional Planning Commission, and they serve the town of Hubbardston. So thank you very much. We're very familiar with all of our communities. And it's our pleasure to be working with all of you on this project. As Dave mentioned, this is phase 2. Phase 1 was done by the Collins Center. Phase 2, working with the Consolidation Task Force, we've identified 4 areas that we'll be looking further into. Trish will be talking about that later on in the presentation. So who are we? For those of you who may not know, the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission serves the city of Worcester and 39 surrounding communities in the lighter blue. The Montechusett Regional Planning Commission serves the 3 cities of Gardner, Leominster, and Fitchburg, and 19 surrounding communities as well. So combined, both of us serve the whole Worcester County area. We're very familiar, almost all of Worcester County. We're very familiar with the problems faced, and that what you're facing now with the decreasing populations, the increasing aging population, maybe around the 495 belt, they have some increases in overall population, but the rest are seeing decreases. The Collins Center identified those in their first studies. Many of you are aware of it and have been recognizing it. I'm not really telling you anything new as far as the student enrollment also and the decrease. And like I said, that's happening across the state. The financial implications of supporting town services, school services, you're not alone. It doesn't make it any easier. But many of our communities have been facing similar challenges for many years. Quite a few of them have had overrides as long ago as 5 or 6 years ago to support the town services and school services, never mind capital expenditures and debt services for other purposes. So we're really looking at this as a regional partnership, as Dave mentioned. It's so important, and there have been so many studies done showing the importance of a good school system and how that reflects on your community, and the importance of a good school system and the home values also within your community. Many studies have shown that when people, and now with technology being the way that it is, many of the scores are available online. They can Google the towns, they can go on to the DESE website, and whatever they value as a potential homeowner or somebody looking for rental property, they take a lot of that into consideration. And the differences in the school districts actually make a significant difference in the home values. I know you're not Dallas, but in Dallas itself, just a few suburbs of some of those districts or public schools within the town, the city of Dallas, there's a difference of between $100,000 to $90,000 of the value based on what school those students attend. It's significant. You need a vibrant town. You need a town that can sustain itself, looking at financing, looking at funding, and you need the school as well. So we're going to look at that all together. Like I said, Trish will go into those 4 talking points and what we're really going to be studying, what the scope of our services is. But it's really a partnership. You need each other to exist and to grow and to face these challenges. I don't have a magic solution. I don't think anybody in this room does, or you probably would have only met twice in the last 2 years and it would have been an easy solution. But we're all in this together. I don't expect an immediate solution to this problem. We recognize that there are unfunded mandates. The school transportation reimbursement is not up to 100%. We all have to acknowledge all of that. We can't expect a miracle that the government, the legislature, is going to fund it at 100%. The school formula, we're all familiar with the challenges faced with that as well. That's not going to change overnight. So what I ask everyone is to be open-minded, to be creative, and to be respectful during this study and all the discussions. We will listen to everyone. We will take what you say, as crazy as it might sound, that really might be a valid idea and something you may want to move forward to. But everyone's opinion counts. So those are kind of my ground rules and all of our ground rules in trying to facilitate meetings and to have it productive and more promising than not. So in reviewing the Collins Center, and included in this study, we're going to be looking at the values-based planning, and what was identified through the World Cafes that were put on by the Collins Center. I don't need to go through the list, but those are recognized. I don't think they've changed in a year, but certainly they will be a topic of discussion as we meet outside the area with all of the staff, with the key town officials, with the public, with students, anyone that we can talk to. If we have to go to Council on Aging, we'll talk to the Council on Aging's. Independent groups, we want to get the word out, we want opinions. We need to hear what everybody has to say. It's not our study, it's not our recommendations, it's going to come from within and within the communities. So with that, I'll turn it over to Trish.
Do I get to stand?
Stand or sit?
Little pointer thing?
Well, you've been driving, so maybe.
I have been driving, so I really do understand it. First with Boston and then back to Boston. Anyway, so we've taken the liberty of kind of dividing up what we think is a pretty realistic scope of work into 4 overlapping components. And we'll talk a little bit about the overlap as we go along. But the first part is really to kind of build on what the Collins Center did and do some scenario planning. If if the population decreases, then what does that mean in terms of implications for the school, for the towns, for economic development, for municipal governance? If population stays static, what plays out after that? What does that scenario mean for the towns? Can we build on that? Can we, are taxes going up? So really to play out the implications of a variety of different scenarios. It's a pretty common planning tool, and we can work with you to develop what those scenarios are. Are we going to think about what happens if the zombie apocalypse happens?
Amazon.
Or Amazon comes to Hubbardston.
Yeah.
We can play out those scenarios. And you want to be kind of realistic, but also think outside of the box. There are things that we wouldn't have thought would have ever happened 50 years ago that are happening today. Climate change, or a variety of things happening within the municipal, state, or federal government. So scenario planning will be a part of this. Regional shared service strategies. We are finding across the Commonwealth that in our 351 towns, it does not make sense for everyone to have an animal control officer. It may not make sense for everyone to have a dispatch. So we're looking more and more. Connor's done quite a bit in terms of some of our region, in terms of looking at where those efficiencies can be. So there's some surveying that'll happen, finding out and not everything makes sense. We've found in our work that shared services, sometimes it's a matter of timing, sometimes it's a matter of geography, sometimes it's a matter of people, personnel. There are a variety of things that make it work, don't work, and so we'll explore that with you. Number 3, economic development strategies, both regional and town-specific. Each of the 5 towns are very unique in a lot of different ways, and so we're going to play that out. We've done that in everybody but Hubbardston. We've done what we called those four of those communities were part of what we call the Rural 11. So we're going to revisit that Rural 11, which identified priority development areas and priority preservation areas. Where do you want to focus your economic development opportunities? So we'll take a look at that. But what we've also done with the Rural 11, so we'll work with Glenn to kind of also do that within the town of Hubbardston, to identify those pieces, look at everybody's master plans or economic development issues that have already taken place. We want to know what's going on already. We feel like we have a good sense of where you're at now, but we want to dig deep and interview people and really understand it in depth. So we'll do that both for the town and then pull it back up and look at it regionally and figure out what makes sense for the region. Because the borders are just that. They're a little line that kind of ends up on a map. We cross them every day, and I crossed a lot of them. And then finally, because regional shared service strategies don't just stop at municipal boundaries, we can also be looking at inter-school district exploration You know, what can the Quabbin talk about with Wachusett versus with Tantascwa, and you know, and really just explore some of those possibilities. Are there kind of, you know, much like within municipal governments, you know, can there be efficiencies or cost savings across school districts, whether it's food service, maintenance, you know, fleet maintenance, bus service, or a variety of things, and we'll explore that with you. So just going to kind of
Can I just add something to that? I forgot to put a slide in here, but, so the 4 areas that we're going to be looking into, the first area that was identified, and a lot of these fall into those same categories, but it would be the alternative use of the school buildings, and looking at potential municipal use. What do you use those buildings for? Identified in the Collins Center were the closure of the schools and the cost savings associated with the closures. If I could just throw out, how many people in this room want to close their elementary school? Alan, 1. Anyone else? So we're looking for those alternate uses. We're looking for the potential savings with the regional shared service strategies, which include positions, it includes buildings, and it includes equipment that could possibly be shared across the town lines and also within the district. The district has a tremendous amount of professional expertise. Could the communities tap into that as a shared resource? Could you tap into the District for Human Resources? Could you tap into them for IT? Those different types of sharing. Could you share a new plow truck because they're plowing the schools? Could they do something in the towns? So we're going to be looking at those different scenarios as well. Trish pretty much covered the economic development within the communities and then the inter-school district exploration. But I did want to talk about the alternative use of the buildings or actually closing the schools, and also to just go in a little bit more in depth on the regional shared services strategies.
Thanks, Jim. So a key part of this is that there, as Janet was just pointing out, is that these are all overlapping. If you decide to close an elementary school, what does that mean for shared services? What does that mean for economic development strategies, or even the kind of this inter-school district exploration? So a lot of this will there will be meetings that have multiple kind of goals as part of them. What I want to go into now is a little bit deeper in each of these 4 components. Scenario planning. As planners, we're often asked to kind of think through, how do we get to a goal? And so we'll ask ourselves, what will happen, what could happen, how do we make it happen? This is just a model I pulled off of the internet, to be honest with you. But the idea is the same. It's like, given any given scenario, and we'll work through that with you guys. Brandon and I sit on a statewide rural policy commission. We're seeing that across our rural communities, populations are decreasing. You get further out into the Berkshires, it's drastic. You get but it's different. I mean, our rural communities are not homogenous. You get out into the Berkshires, you get vacation homes. You get down in the Cape, it's different. You get into, the town of Holden is technically a rural community, but it looks very different than the town of Oakham. So we'll play out kind of what what our current demographics are, how they might change in the future. So do a little kind of looking into our crystal ball, and play that out. So predictive, exploring, and then what really is most likely. So we'll play that out. And for each of these, there we go. I'm going to tell you what you can expect from CMRPC and MRPC, what we need from you, and you'll see there's a common theme there, but also what are some of the expected outcomes. So by the end of June next year, you're going to be seeing some... I've got things to do. By the end of May, we will give you some possible strategies that play out from those various scenarios. Given X, you might expect Y. So you're going to expect us to sit down and look at anything that we can that's been written already. Obviously, we've got most of the, if not all of the Collins Center. I was actually in a training this afternoon with somebody from the Collins Center. We're going to meet with community leaders from each town and with a school district, both separately and together. We find that some people talk differently when you're in a room with different people versus when you're never. We're gonna summarize those meetings. We're gonna make some observations. We're gonna ask some clarifying questions, and it's an iterative process. We're gonna constantly kind of be trying to refine both the scenarios, but also the strategies on the other end. What we need from you, contacts. We need you to constantly be pulling more people in, because the more opinions and thoughts we have, the more vibrant and more refined our both our scenarios, but our outcomes and strategies will be. We need you to participate. This is great turnout. We need this every time we sit down. As Janet pointed out, we need honesty. We need people to be creative, come open-minded, be positive, respectful, and we need your time. This is going to be a very time-consuming process.
And if I just add, it is May, the end of May, because that's when the grant needs to be expended.
Thank you.
I told Trish, that's why she signed on to it, because she had that extra month.
Oh, we see how you guys are.
You dropped the ball.
We see how you guys operate.
We're going to be seeing a lot of you. You're going to be seeing a lot of them. And again, the outcomes are going to be kind of a discrete set of scenarios that you can then say, on the other end, well, we've got a decreasing population. This is what we can expect. These are the strategies you need to play out. And everybody can agree. The second overlapping component is really regional services strategies. And there's a number of this, as Jen has pointed out, there's a number of these things happening in and among some of the communities that are sitting here in this room already. There's shared animal control with, I think, and Connor can help me on some of this, Hardwick and Barry and New Braintree are sharing animal control. There's some shared emergency dispatch already happening. Is there shared building inspector?
Yes.
Yes, the Hawk.
Barry, Hardwick, New Braintree, Peterson.
And we'll be digging into what makes some of these partnerships work versus what, where some of the challenge. You're sharing Council on Aging and Senior Center with Barry and Hardwick. So there's a lot of these things that are happening in these communities, and there's other examples that we can pull from other communities in not only our region, in the Montechusett region, but around the Commonwealth. We've been kind of amassing this repository of memorandums of understanding and contracts. Yes, sir.
Also, there's a new one recently, in the past year, is a shared service between Hardwick and New Braintree with the police force.
Yes.
So that one's now only becoming state recognized, and other communities are picking up on that, because it can happen.
Absolutely. And there are resources out there to support some of this stuff, and we're pretty connected to that. Janet's constantly talking to folks at the Division of Local Services, Sean Cronin, who was actually, I think, part of this grant program. But there's a number of other opportunities out there, ways to fund this stuff that we can bring to the table as well.
If I could just add, talking about the police and fire, there was a survey done for all the communities. I think it may have been done through DLS, but with this survey, they had a community compact, a best practices implementation meeting a few weeks ago, and it was mentioned at that time, Sean Cronin mentioned it, that the most interest they have throughout the state is shared police and shared fire. So it's very interesting that people are coming around. And New Braintree and Hardwick were the first to do it in the state, and I believe they're still the only ones. Some are coming close, but they're the only ones that have actually done that. Thanks for mentioning that.
And as I pointed out, a lot of times it's a matter of timing. It may not be right, tomorrow or in 6 months, but maybe in 2 years. Part of it's personnel sometimes, timing, retirement plays into it. Does it make sense geographically? We found that as we were talking about animal control, it didn't make sense to have Hardwick and West Boylston sharing the same animal control officers, just a little too spread out. So we'll look at that with you. What we've done in the past with all of our communities is do a survey. Almost every town function, even from town administration is being looked at in terms of shared services in some parts of the Commonwealth. But we've got what we call match.com for towns, where we ask every town what part of this do you want to share. Are you interested in sharing? Are you already sharing and you're enthusiastic about it? No, never mind. I would never go that direction. We're just happy with what we've got. And so not only shared services, but also joint procurement. We can jointly procure a number of goods, EMS supplies, fuel, diesel, fuel oil, propane, that kind of thing. Not only to help with the towns, but also through CMRPC to help them get a better deal. and better delivery service. And a lot of times, this is not about saving money, but getting efficient service. You know, the stuff that you're paying for now, you may not be seeing fire inspections happening in everywhere you really supposed to get it, but if you share that service with 5 towns, you might get a better service and decrease the, you know, the risks that each of the towns are.
Comment on that. Basically, as far as my perspective of it is that if we want to regionalize or share our services, whatever, my ultimate outlook of this would be not only the convenience of the partnership, but do we have any real savings? We can combine to hell completely, but are we saving any money anywhere? And the problem, and this has been bringing up, is money. That's the name of the game. And we got to see that. At least I want to see it.
I think the important thing is when you enter into intergovernmental services, shared services agreement, as the district did when it shared the superintendency and the administrative assistant to the superintendent for 3 years. Both districts, you know, certainly garnered a good savings because they only paid for half of the salary of those 2 individuals. And so that there's certainly money to be saved, benefits, half the benefits, you know, were shared by the districts as well. And that expanded to be the superintendent, a director of curriculum, the administrative assistant, and some of Cheryl's back and forth time working when someone else was out on maternity leave in the other district. So there is money to be saved and opportunities, I believe, out there between and among school districts to, you know, potentially save some monies for the communities.
It should also be pointed out that ours was a unique situation because you had historical background.
Yep.
And so when you look at these opportunities, you have to look at individuals. Well, maybe we can do this because this certain individual is in place and they have the know-how, the backgrounds, etc. Sometimes it might not be easy to just put somebody cold in to say, oh, we want to do this. Let's just throw somebody into it. So, I mean, that's something we have to look at in the individuals.
And when Trish mentioned, you know, what we're doing on the community level, and this region has done very well with the shared services, and they're really moving in that direction. And I know, Hubbardston, you have your shared animal control with Gardner, the shared dispatch with Rutland, and that type of thing, shared bucket truck, the grant that we had written way back when. But so to take that and to reach out to the area school districts, the public schools, the school districts, the Voc schools, to see if you can get some type of synergy working with all of them as well. Now, I know many folks benefit from the French River Collaborative as far as purchasing and special education, I believe, as well. But let's get like-minded folks in the same room and talking. We have found it so successful in all of these shared services. And that's where you recognize the money savings, and those are certainly taken into consideration. Ultimately, that's what you want. And sometimes it may not save as much, but it's the delivery of those services as well.
You're getting what you're paying for. And then it also, you know, it also incorporates the school district as well. You know, if the school district has, you know, the most awesome IT person in the planet, then they might want to share it. Or human resources is something we're finding a number of our smaller communities don't want, you know, a full-time human resources person. Maybe there's some sharing there. So I think it's not just between municipalities, but within districts as well. Again, for this component, what to expect, you're going to see surveys, and we're going to be talking to, you know, the town administration. We're going to be talking to the town clerk, to the town accountant, to the town assessor. You know, the long laundry list. Almost everybody, you know, who's a professional within town hall, but also those boards and commissions, because we want to talk to the planning board. We want to talk to the zoning board, to the board of health. We need to talk to the library, with the police and the fire. We're going to go deep on this stuff. There will be meetings. Yes, sir.
What are you going to ask?
What am I going to ask?
You know, not specifically, we're going to ask the planning board or to, you know, the librarian or something. But what are you looking?
Essentially, it's like, are there places where you're not meeting the goals of your agency or your department, and do you have excess capacity? What we've also found is that, you know, the town of Berry has this great senior center. The town of Hardwick needed more of that. So there's a sharing there. So, you know, it's not always 1 + 1 = 2. Sometimes it's, you know, 1.5 and 1.5 or something So it's really trying to figure out what that combination is that meets the needs of the various participating parties. So it's what are you lacking? What do you hope to accomplish? What is your budget? Where are you going? And those are the kind of questions. Other things I would ask Connor when we go talk to folks is kind of it.
And I think with the surveys as well, the public, we're going to get it out to all the stakeholders, not just everybody in the room and the town officials, but to the general public as well. And some of the surveys, it will be determined, similar to a master plan process or an open space process. You meet with those key officials and those key boards, and they want to ask certain questions. What if your finance committee is looking for a debt exclusion for something coming in the future, your council on aging, okay? So you really want to know what your town thinks about it. We can include that as part of the survey. It's done confidentially. It can either be done on paper, it can be done online. Conservation, we're thinking of sharing a conservation agent, we're thinking of sharing a veterans agent, we're thinking of sharing a police department. It's been successful elsewhere. Could we do this? Could we share a highway department? Could we share equipment? You need to know what your town folks think about this as well. So the surveys will be distributed not only internally but externally as well. And it also gives you an idea of what you might expect at town meeting. Sometimes surveys, people feel free to say what they want, and that's a good thing.
Just a quick observation. Years ago, we had county government. And county government did work. It got way out of whack, and we know what happened because of that. But that same perspective is what you're talking about is what county government was about. Not only with potentially schools, but services, any type of medical, health, and other type of. So, I mean, those models were there. It's just that they, in itself, imploded. So in a way, here we are now talking again of looking at a kind of a county government, regional government strategy of services and in-kind services or personnel. Just an observation that we have done this before.
Right.
Absolutely. So again, what we need from participants is, are your contacts, who else do we need to be talking to? We need your participation, the honesty, the creativity, the open-mindedness, the respect, the time, and positive, let's think we're going to get something positive out of this. We don't want somebody saying, well, I don't want to do another survey, I've talked to you already. We really do need positive, to expect that this is going to be something that's going to be positive for everybody involved.
We've always done it this way. Well, that's fine. If you want to keep doing it this way, it's going to get worse. You're already at a point a few years ago, with the reduction in all budgets and services. So you really do need to start thinking differently. And like I can't push enough. We need to hear what you have to say, everybody.
The expected outcome from this will be a review of some possible services that might be shared to increase efficiency of services, cost savings within the 5-town region and the 3 regional school districts. We'll come up with kind of a menu. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. It doesn't have to be 5 towns in a school district. It can be some pieces, parts. It can be A and B, but not C. So we'll come up with a review of some of the possible strategies. The third overlapping component is really that everybody recognizes that if our communities are prosperous, there is vibrant economic development, our tax bases will grow, we can support the services and the schools that we want to see in our community. So we really want to promote economic development. That'll require an inventory of what we have already. Where are the businesses that are existing already? Both the land-based businesses, the home-based businesses, what does that look like? We'll do a little bit of an assessment there. Economic development is often asset-based. We're looking at not just the gazebo in downtown Barrie, but we're looking at the people who are here. What are they doing? What are their professions? What are their occupations? What are they trained in? The places, the events, the opportunities that are here, whether it's the Warrior Dash or Hiller Airfield in New Braintree. We'll be looking at all of that and kind of mapping that for you. It's cooperative, it's integrated. That's none of these businesses exist in an island. The schools are not in an island. The towns are not in an island. It's all the bed and breakfast, the restaurants, the gas stations, and all the supporting businesses, the insurance, the banks, they're all very important to both the local economy, but also the regional economy. We'll pull in folks from the chambers of commerce, from the business community, and talk to them as well. Again, as I mentioned, with 4 of the CMRPC communities, we've done what's called, we've prioritized development preservation. It's just another way for some people don't like the word smart growth. It's a matter of keeping development where development needs to be and preservation where preservation needs to be, and being conscious of where we want to develop things and where we don't want to develop things, and putting our emphasis on the areas that we do want to develop and the areas that we do want to preserve. It's really just looking at that kind of smartly locally, but also regionally. If the intersection at 4 corners is really important for the region, and we really focus our economic development there so that we can preserve all of the lakes around that, then we want to focus our development there. We can make it more walkable, we can build crosswalks, and a lot of this stuff is not big price tags. A lot of it's, sometimes it's smaller. It's building, Wi-Fi in Berry Town Center and Hubbardston Town Center. Stuff that really supports the development. It doesn't have to be bringing Amazon to the region. It can be making it so that it's supported and it will attract the region. And again, so it's local supporting regional, supporting local as an economic development strategy. CMRPC has done some of this stuff. Again, Rural 11 is a model. You can see the map down there. All the orange are kind of those priority development areas. The green, because this region has a wealth of open space in terms of the Ware River watershed, the Quabbin, and all the state parks and forests and so forth. We've done a lot of work on the Route 122 Lost Village Scenic Byway, which runs from Paxton up to, actually it runs all the way up to Orange. And one of those projects that we've worked with Glenn and actually the other regional planning agency out in Franklin County with. We've also been working really closely with the revitalization of a group called the Business Community of Berry, where they're hoping to kind of really build kind of events and businesses in the town. And then we've also spent a lot of time really fleshing out, recognizing that there are certain niches of businesses in this region. We've spent some time investing in a group called Central Mass Grown, which is to support the local farms. So those are some different things that we've done, and we can build on as we work with both the towns, but also the region. Again, what you can expect from us, we're going to be looking at everybody's master plan for this. Chris Ryan and his folks in the Community Development and Land Use Department at CMRPC are not only writing master plans, they're very good at reading plans, gleaning from those the important, the salient points that are relevant to an economic development strategy. They get out on the streets, they're doing, they're talking to the businesses, they're talking to the residents about what matters, what makes a community unique. We'll be meeting with community leaders in each town separately together. We'll be summarizing those meetings and observations and asking clarifying questions. Same thing we need from you on each of these things is contacts, more contacts. What are the businesses that we need to be talking to? We need your participation, your honesty, creativity, open-mindedness, respect, and we need time. The outcomes you can expect, you can see what we'll do is we'll revisit that map that for the 4 communities. Bring in the Hubbardston component of that, develop an assets map. As part of that, we will then take a look at kind of your typical SWOT analysis. What are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats? Come up with a variety of if the strengths are a lot of the open space, the people, the opportunities are, a lot of stuff that comes out of the school district itself. You have trained and eager young people coming out with great training and education. How do we keep them in the region? Threat is that they leave the region, right? The recommendation, and there will be some recommendations for next steps and action strategies. Again, some of that is the RPAs, us and Glenn will come to the table with different resources that we think. I think I saw today that Glenn just got his SED strategy approved. Is that right?
That sounds right.
What's RPA?
A regional planning agency is what Central Mass Regional Planning Commission in Montechusett. And The SEG strategy I just alluded to is a comprehensive economic development strategy that Glenn has done for his region. We work closely with the Worcester Chamber on in our region. But it's a broader strategy that's constantly being built on. Any questions on economic development? And then the last one is really this inter-school district exploration. This is really everybody coming together with the various pieces that they have and really trying to build, this cooperative effort that I think we can all appreciate will make it explore those pieces that we think, we can build on. We'll let some of these go, but if we don't start the conversations, we'll never know.
When you say inter-school district, do you mean?
I'm not sure that's the right word, but
It's not intra.
no, it's not.
So inter means in with other area schools?
Yes.
Okay.
It's talking to the folks that watch you.
We're doing that tomorrow morning. And then
I think
again on
we're,
the
see,
16th.
we're done, aren't we?
I don't know, we're talking.
Talking is good. Talking's the first step. So, what to expect from there? We're gonna survey. We'll do a survey of some of the nearby school districts, similar to what we're gonna do in towns in terms of possibilities for sharing. What are your interests in? What are you doing already? There's a shared. We'll find out what the lay of the land is on some of this stuff. We'll do a review of some of the demonstrating. I think there are some models out there where school districts are actually sharing stuff already. We'll try and learn more about that ourselves and share that with you.
And you know a lot of these districts already, right?
Yes.
They're in your catchment.
Many, yes,
Correct.
yes, yeah. There are some, that, was it Peterson, Shrewsbury, what's the one? I forget the name. I did.
New Salem?
Yes, thank you. And then we'll meet with the school district management and department leaders a little bit more to learn where their extra, again, where your extra capacity is, what your needs, and then we'll basically go shopping and see what we find for them. Again, same need for the participants. We need context. As I started looking at a variety of school districts. They're small cities. I mean, you guys are running small cities here. You've got maintenance, you have IT, the same thing that Brian and Teresa have in their town halls, actually sometimes more, right? So we'll be talking to all those folks. The expected outcomes, this is really going to be a first blush. It's going to be a review of some of the possibilities for collaboration between the nearby school districts and recommendations for next steps. Those next steps might be pretty broad. They may be, bring everybody together from each of the school districts of 5 different school districts, janitorial services or something. They may be pretty broad, but we'll at least figure out if there's something there to be explored. So with that, the last piece we really want to incorporate into this whole project is a student participation component. We've got a number of opportunities. I feel like we can incorporate the students into as we go along between now and the end of May. There will be a number of community meetings. We've got child care opportunities. A way to make some of our community meetings more robust is to have people taking care of the children off on the side so that they can actively participate in the meeting. Sometimes you want the young people, some of the older students, to actually participate in the meetings. This is the young people coming up in our communities and want to participate. They can be sign-ins, there's greetings, facilitation, I don't know what. Note-taking, thank you.
You missed it. No problem.
Thank you.
I was wondering what acronym that was.
Note-taking. Websites and social media, they're much better at this than I am. Survey distribution, as Janet pointed out, surveys are going to be a critical component of this, being able to promote that, whether it's handing out a physical survey or just promoting it via social media, pushing it on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, something like that, right? There we go. But also smaller select, there may be a smaller select group. When I was a high school student, we had civics class. We didn't ever get opportunities to walk outside the class. I'm hoping that you guys would allow us the opportunity to take some students and actually allow them to do some hands-on planning, to understand what scenario planning is, one of the things that Brian and I hear a lot in our rural policies that's, we need more community leaders. Our towns got, the same person who is on the Concom is on the planning board. We need people to appreciate what municipal governance is and the value of participating in it. And so we feel like this might be an opportunity to do kind of that participatory civics lesson, whether it's public speaking and really making people confident and feeling like they can participate in their own town governance and sort of whether they become a planner like Connor or Janet, or Brian, or just actually, decide they're going to be a lifelong member of the planning board. So that's where we're at. If you follow these, this made sense to me last night. The scenario planning for facilities use should lead you to efficient use of space and higher tax dollars. The regional services, shared service strategies should lead you to improve service and cost savings. The regional local economic development should lead you to a higher tax base, more jobs, vibrant communities. The inter-district school collaboration should lead you to improved opportunities, and it's where you can use your strengths. And this hopefully will all lead to kind of a regional prosperity. As Janet was talking about, so much of our communities so many of our communities are vital because of the schools and the towns and the relationship between the two. So we feel like this is a very exciting project. We're excited to be part of it. I think the state is very excited about it because this is something that's not just happening in these 5 communities. I think a number of communities are looking at the very same issues across the state. We could do the same project in a number of areas of our region, and Glenn probably could, and it's the same across the Commonwealth, where demographics are changing. We've got buildings that were built in the 30s, the 50s, the 70s, the 90s even, and the uses are constantly changing. We need to know as communities and as school districts how we can work together to best utilize the resources we have, take advantage of the strengths and deal with our weaknesses. Anything else to add, Jenny?
No, I was just going to say one of my big things is in most of our studies that we do, really trying to promote the civic engagement. As many of you know, Trish mentioned in the rural communities, and even I know in the town of Grafton, some of their planning board members were actually write-in members. It's hard to find people to serve. I greatly respect all of you for doing what you do. It's not always easy. Certainly school committee members, boards of selectmen, finance committee members, you have to make your difficult decisions. Planning board members, you're looking out for the future of the communities and within the bylaws and promoting different bylaws. But with the civic engagement, the youth, they're our future. We hope to keep them around, that they want to stay in the area. I feel that reaching out to the youth and the students during this particular study is important. What would keep them there? How do they look to their communities? What do they see in the future? What might keep them there? Why did they leave? Looking at some of your school choice students, why did you come here? I mean, that's so important to know. Those that aren't here, why did you leave? Well, why would you consider leaving? So to really take all of that in for the sustainability, not only of the school, the town, the whole region. And change is very difficult. We all know that. We all recognize it. No one likes it. But you really can't keep just doing the same thing. It can't stay the way it is. And I think that's why this task force was created 2 years ago. It was very progressive, and I admire you for doing that and sticking with it. And in just the few meetings that I've been here, the passion shows from that task force and the importance.
Just want to say thank you. The enthusiasm and the mission is fantastic. When you're also looking at the various groups, would you also look at the Historical Society, realtors, and the elderly? Although the youth is absolutely important and paramount, but all those other constituencies should be included too, because I think the realtors can help also in the planning process, and what draws people or what doesn't draw people. I mean, we kind of know some of our barriers, But at the same time, thank you, because you are fitting in fact, and the enthusiasm is great, and we look forward to this. Okay?
So sort of the Texas point, long ago, as we started this is all because we don't have any money. And I think that up there, which I think is wonderful, once I unscrambled my eyes,
Sorry.
is not like a light switch. You know, that's like an ultimate goal sort of thing. How do we, outside of the people in this room and just outside this room, how do we, that's the biggest challenge I think we have, is have our constituents embrace that, because everybody sort of needs to, not just us.
I can answer that. I asked around this room, how many people want to close their school? Paul, you said one. I mean, and that's how many in this room. If we get into our communities, I'm sure you're going to hear that same voice, okay? That's how you bring them to the table. You don't have many alternatives. And by looking at the Collins Center and looking at those school closures, you have three, I think the third choice on the alternate use of the schools, you could close 3 elementary schools and the savings is 1.5 million, is that, or maybe 2 million?
It is and it isn't. It's 1.5 million for the school.
Right, but the town.
But the town, we push back maintaining those buildings and heating them and so forth through the town. And it's really the same pocketbook that the money comes out of. And so while my budget will look better for an hour and a half, the town's going to say, well, what was the point of this? Because I just pushed that back on their plate. And I mean, so while we would say at least we're driving our resources toward our core mission, but really we leave the town with a building that they don't need, that they can't afford any better to heat it if I'm running it or if they're running it. So in a way, when you really look at it, that we're all in this together, yes, we could save money and we could save some personnel. You know what I mean? Not have some extra nurses and those sorts of things that would help us. But in the end, all the building costs would go back on the plate of the town. And so we know that, and they know that. And if I were a selectman, I know that's hard for any of you to believe that I don't want to be. If I were a selectman, I would be saying, oh, Maureen, just leave it in the school's budget. The last thing we need is to pick up all those additional costs. And so I really feel for the municipal side as we say, well, we could save this, but they're all saying, you're not going to save anything for me, Maureen. You're just saving it on your side of the ledger. So I think as school people, we're very aware of that. And so while it looks like really great from our side, it's not really great from the community side. And it's not a good community decision. It's just, unless we can share the service, unless we can do something with those facilities that really makes the town more vigorous and more attractive, then it makes sense. But just leaving it empty doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well, I mean, we always have different opinions. And
Well, that's so shocking.
Here we go again. The concept that you're putting in here, proposing that if you return a building back to the town, I don't think that any town with any amount of brains, even if they have a 0 brains, would let the building rot.
Well, they have to pay for it, is my point.
They're going to have to pay for it one way or another.
That's my
The
point.
thing about it is that they can put it to some beneficial use if, in case that we do give up a building. And obviously, I don't foresee that happening. But the thing about it is that I'm sure that every single town has a purpose or a way of doing whatever they do best for usability of a building. They're not going to let it rot.
Oh, and they're not going to let it rot, but it becomes their obligation and responsibility. And right now, it is very difficult to ascertain how we could, repurpose that building without a lot of conversation and opportunity and people who might be willing and able to use it. And I think Claire has brought this up numerous times about if we're going to repurpose it, we really have to think it through. Are there grants that would allow us to repurpose it? And I think you've asked, what about housing, low-income housing? What about elderly housing? What about those kinds of opportunities? And so I think it bears conversation. And I think, Tex, if you really listen to each other, I really think we agree on this, and that's scary.
That could be a very jarring experience.
So Dr. Marshall, you mentioned grant opportunities, and that's one of the benefits, having us work with our communities and also with the district on this particular project. We're gonna be very intimately involved with everyone. But we're so familiar with so many of the grant opportunities that exist, and by identifying and knowing some weaknesses or, I have almost weekly calls from the Hardwick Police Department looking for funding for their police station that they're trying to build. I know this, it's on my radar, and I'll shoot out emails here and there. This just came up, I don't know, but here it is, look at it. We're here to help. If you need the grant writing services, we have that availability as well, Glenn does as well. So to make us aware of it, it just helps in this whole process, because even if we're in the middle of this, right now there are efficiency and regionalization grants out there. IT grants are coming around the corner. So we may not be done with this particular study, but if opportunities present themselves, we'll jump on it and we'll make sure everybody knows about it as well. Why wait?
Jenny, will you send us a copy of
Jess
this?
has it.
Jess already has
Yeah.
it? Great, Jess.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Will you post that?
Yep, and I'll distribute it to all the
Great.
posters.
And I agree that the concept, we can start this conversation with the last piece of the Collins Center, is things will change. We need to make a change, and we have a say in that change. And we're going to get through there we're going to get it through together. We'll get there. And we have to have those options, and we have to make a decision. We started 2 years ago, and we're still moving that way. And I'm grateful because we've expanded it from a consolidation of schools. That we were a lone wolf in this. Of course we brought the community in, but we were the lone perspective. Now we're getting a bigger picture of this. So it has to change, it will change, and I'm glad that you've echoed that, because that was very clear from the Collins. So it's not us sitting here and saying that we're going to close schools. It is us together to make that decision, and it will change. We will strengthen this region better, or we will fail. And I don't think anybody around this room wants us to fail. So we'll go those grants, and we will make those tough decisions. And I do truly believe what Tex said, that there are repurpose opportunities for our buildings, and the Mass School Building Association has to make that. They kicked the tires out there in the western part of the state and made them pay for roofs and everything, but that has to change. So through your help and effort and the Commerce's, we can do that. So I'm sorry that I can talk a little lot, but...
No, and I do want to throw out, I think I mentioned at the last meeting, if I didn't, I thought I did. But in talking with Sean Cronin at the DLS, who oversees the Community Compact Program, we were talking about this study. I speak with him frequently on a lot of things. And in discussing this, I mentioned to him about, the Collins Center pointing out the reuse of the schools. So what are the limitations? What are the limitations that exist through the Mass School Building Authority? Is it how many years out? I'm not an expert on this, so I go to the experts, I ask the questions. And he said, Janet, you're not alone. This question is coming up in other parts of the state. And so he is going to coordinate a meeting between myself, with him, and with MSBA to talk about this. And if it is a problem, with these decreasing enrollments, it's significant, do they need to change the legislation?
Yes.
We're not afraid to do that. We need support. If I come back and say, school building authority will welcome some type of change, you need to reach out to your legislators. We need letters of support. We can bring that together. We can reach out to all of our other communities that face the same challenges, and as part of a MARPA group, which is the Mass Association of Regional Planning Agencies, we can get out to the Berkshires. We meet every month. We blast emails to each other. We work very well together. So that is a possibility, but Sean threw that out there. So we need to know how, and Cheryl, I know you have this information because you send out the debt schedules. Who's still paying, if anyone, on their elementary levels? Okay, or how long has it, that type of information, that's some of the information, you don't need to answer necessarily, but that's some of the information. Looking at your community's capital improvement plans, if you have one. I've mentioned it before, I don't think you were here, Mark, maybe you were. You may not like everything we have to say, but we're going to throw ideas out there. You're not going to like what other people have to say. But if towns are buying $750,000 fire trucks, does everybody have to have one when mutual aid is dependent on? and all the towns show up anyway. Do you all, I mentioned street sweepers, and there was some opposition to that. But if you could save, I don't know how much street sweepers are, say they're even 100,000, are they more than that, Brian?
Yeah.
Okay, so if every community could save even $100,000 on a street sweeper, if, okay, my roads aren't gonna be done until May instead of April, when we like to have them done, what's the value in that? And that's what you would ask in a survey to all your townspeople. Don't call your boards of selectmen because you have tons of sand and salt on the side of the road.
They're gonna call you.
Well, all right, so do like caller ID or something, but no, but seriously, you know, you're looking at the overall benefit, and then you coordinate it. So one year Barry gets it first, the next year Hubbardston gets it first, and just alternate it that way. But you've got to think out of this
And
box.
don't let your DPW director tell you it can't be done.
And there are models, there are models throughout the state where this has been done. There's a bucket truck that's shared between 5 communities, and they're not contiguous. And it's been going on since 2013 when that grant was written. And it was a $200,000 grant that was awarded. And when we actually went out to bid on the bucket truck, it came in low enough that they were able to buy a chipper to go along with that. And every year these towns contribute money into this fund for the maintenance. Sometimes some towns benefit if it's before the leaves come out, others, oh well, maybe next year you get that. But there's also an understanding between the DPW directors and in that intermunicipal type of agreement that if there's an emergency situation in Barry, say you're hit by an ice storm, it doesn't affect the town of Auburn and they have the truck, that truck's coming into Barry. So it's just bringing the key partners in, agreeing to these municipal agreements. As part of this grant, there's been $10,000 set aside for legal. And the legal means if you need to reach out to your town council, if we're moving forward with these agreements, you can tap into that funding rather than going into your own coffers. Teresa?
I definitely concur with the economic development, and I liked all those slides. And looking at other, Hardwick does a lot of the intermunicipal agreements, shared services. Would love to be able to look at joint procurement and all of that. I think those are great, great opportunities. But could you bump it back to slide 14 for me, please? So when we look at that, so that's the one slide, really, that looks like it's kind of looking at the school.
Yes.
And that, could you just give us a little more information on, because we've gotten a lot on what we're going to be looking at, regionalizing and those types of things, but could you give a little more detail when it comes to looking at the schools and the nearby districts, what you'll be looking into there?
One thing I'm going to throw out, Teresa, one thing that we've heard from so many different communities, different school superintendents that we've talked through the years, is the school transportation. And they feel that you don't always get the bids. I'm trying to be careful here, looking at Ellie and Brad. They don't always get the bids from multiple companies. So if maybe you partnered with a neighbor, maybe with Wachusett, and went out to bid together, it may be more competitive. And transportation costs are significant. Granted, you're reimbursed, but that's a significant cost. So just that alone, I would love to do. I've been trying to do that for a couple of years, but it's the timing of the contracts and everything else, and to find partners. They don't have to be contiguous. You have huge transportation agencies that serve the whole Commonwealth. So it doesn't have to be a neighboring community. It could be Ashburnham, Westminster, or something like that, to try to get those competitive bids in, or a Quabog. So maybe Lysac would bid up at the Quabbin area, or Atlantic Express. Right?
No,
first
run out of business.
Right. What's the
John McCarthy.
Okay, so it's back to McCarthy. Okay. Right. I knew one of them went out, but that was a huge issue back then. So McCarthy, maybe they would bid down in the Quabog district because it's competitive. So you're not just going to win one school district, and you have to sharpen your pencil. We have found that with so many of our procurements, even with the EMS supplies, someone that didn't even bid on those supplies immediately dropped their prices. because they knew it was going to be competitive. Boundtree has never bid on this, but they came into every single community and said, we're going to match those prices. And they were significant, 20 to 40%. So, Tex, to go back to what you said, it may not be recognizable savings that we throw out there, but certainly the bottom line at the end of the year, you're going to be saving a lot less on those EMS supplies based on what you anticipated spending than what you had to begin with. So I'm going to use you as an example also, Teresa. You're sharing the COA with the town of Barry.
Correct.
You're sharing your ambulance, you now have ambulance service from the town of Ware. So to put into perspective, I can't really do an apple for an apple type of thing, but to do that same type of process with the different school districts and the public schools. I mean, I may say districts, but I do mean public schools like a Leicester, a North Brookfield, where they're not in a district itself. But to reach out to all of them, Trish has this wallpaper, crazy wallpaper all over her office of this Match.com. Who's looking for what? What do you have for retirements coming up? What are your needs? Where can you save money? To do that same type of thing with the school districts, not just within the communities, but to expand it even further. So that's what we're looking for. Also, it's been mentioned at a prior meeting about offering space to other communities. What if you have excess, not only in capacity with staffing, but you have excess space in these schools as part of the reuse? That can come into the inter-school or a collaborative or some other type of school that's not necessarily a public school, of which they're already doing, but maybe there are more out there.
Right.
What are other schools doing? What are their best practices? I know you have your meetings, but to throw a different type of question out there to get people thinking and talking. I've been invited to meet with the Wachusett district. They meet with the area town administrators either monthly or quarterly. They just postponed the meeting, but just to get somebody different in the room too to talk and to listen. So that's what we're looking to do. Also with staffing, to talk to the school staffing. What do you think you might be able to share? Where could potential savings be? What would you like? They live in those buildings for however many days during the year, 180, 160? 180 days. What could you bring into this school system to go just beyond the superintendents, but to actually get into the staff as well? So, did that explain it?
It did. One of my other questions, I was just wondering if you were going to be looking at other components, like school choice, for instance. That's a pretty hefty burden we have, so I was just wondering if we're kind of going to be looking at that type of stuff as well.
There's nothing that's really off the table, I don't think. Collins Center certainly did a lot of preliminary work as well. In what they, have you seen their report?
I do, just if I could comment on that too, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that things like school choice and special ed and those sorts of things are happening in parallel with the district working on those things while we've sort of refocused our regional plan here with CMRPC overall. So it doesn't seem to me you guys would be getting into too much detail on items like that.
Right.
It's more the what was presented before.
Committee and discussions, yeah. And we'll ask the experts. I'm not an expert on special education. Certainly I would defer some information to Maureen or someone else, or to call the state if there's some underlying answer that needs to be made. We have those resources. We've done them before. But asking, I'm not afraid to ask other people as well. I mean, we do it frequently.
At the end of the day, it has to match up to the grant that we filed and received.
Correct.
It may
That's
not
correct.
be the internal operations of the Quabbin School District that gets reviewed here. If somebody wanted to do that, they're welcome to. I'm not sure this grant is the vehicle for that.
No.
I wanted to ask you a question about buildings. I don't think the choice is, you described earlier a vacant building that the town then ends up with in Hubbardston. I can't speak for any other communities.
Well, Hubbardston is a very different animal than the other towns, admittedly, relative to the use of.
So many conversations I have start with that sentence.
No, I mean, you are in desperate need for municipal space.
Well, thank you, because that's what I know that to be the case. And so, but isn't there the potential for, it seems to me if you have a school, a population that's shrinking and you are at risk of at least one or more buildings being, or could be, maybe a way to keep a local building functioning is to share that space with the municipality who has space that is in. Now, there are shared problems, Corey bringing adults into a building with kids, I understand all that, but that might be the benefit. I think we have a building coming up for a vote on the 24th and then the 7th. Most everyone I speak to is in favor of that, but I believe it has a dubious prognostication for coming true. I'm going to need some space pretty quick,
Well, when Cheryl and I have looked, and Debbie, don't throw anything at me, promise. Quite frankly, we don't need, if we reorganized, we could move all the Hubbardston kids to different places, probably into Barry and move some things around, and you can have the whole thing for municipal space.
But I don't want the whole thing. I think
No, I understand
the
that, but we're going to have to move some kids to give you municipal space. Well, I'm not saying we
But I
can't.
thought you had already shrunk down in Hubbardston to the point where there is space now. You're
Well,
already
there's-
renting it out to someone else.
We're
is
renting
my
it out to a
point. So,
collaborative, correct?
Better than me.
Yeah, I could. And we've had, but I don't know if that's sufficient space for you, and we could give you more.
Okay, but where this group has to, then where I need central masses, not only on the school building authority and where the borrowing and how much I now, is that gonna screw things up? I also need to know, what, it's gonna be more than just the question of whether there's, it's gonna be a question of who does, suppose I put a use in that building that has, and you then need space 10 years from now, what happens then? And I don't know what the school building assistance authority would probably frown on having to come back in and pay for
Yeah.
that building to get retrofitted back to a school.
Well, it's cheaper though than restarting from the ground up. And
So just figure out what the population is for the next 25 years, or until you and I retire.
Well, I think 25 years.
As long as Amazon doesn't come in or, something like that, where.
Well, no, I think that those are really good things for us to look at and have conversations about, because certainly we can accommodate that. We found, collaboratives to rent space from us in order to fill schools. But obviously, we only have a one-year contract, and that was by design, with the selectmen saying, okay, 1 year. And so come January, I'll say to the selectmen, what are you thinking? And if they need that space, the collaborative will have to make adjustments, which, we lose some revenue, but you get space. And that's kind of important. We can
Yeah, but
we can
maybe I
move the
charge
space.
off some of my district assessment as rent. So, there's another way for me to generate funding for a district if I'm using your space.
Right,
And
right.
I'd be happy with it to
The only,
explore
the only,
that.
the only concern that I have, and it's an MSBA concern that we can obviously talk about, is if that building is not a school, and New Braintree needs a new roof, it's not gonna be with MSBA grants that I write. If Hardwick needs a new roof, and that's coming down the pipe, there's no question about the age of that roof is worrisome as well. The circumstances with Hubbardston, you have, a 20, 23, 24-year-old building, and there are gonna be some issues. So we have to look at, okay, what's MSBA gonna do? And we have the capacity to garner considerable grant money to do roofs and do windows and things like that. So that's a concern that we have. We have a roof project that we're still paying for in Ocamp, this MSBA grant money, that we have to be concerned about. We have an MSBA project that is probably, maybe 3 or 4 years in with new roof and windows in Barry. New Braintree just got another letter from them saying they want me to put another grant in for a roof there. I put a grant in last year. Engineers from the state came and said that they have so little money that they won't even look at a roof until it's 30 years old. So, so we're a little concerned about some of that. But those are questions, as Janet has pointed out, we have to ask, and maybe look at legislation, and, the state has to sort of, give us a little help and assistance too.
So Jen, can I just sort of throw out there that what just happened there was an example of what you're gonna do? You're gonna knock on Brian's door and say, hey, what do you need? He's gonna say, I need space.
Yeah.
You're gonna say, okay, how are we gonna get space? And then just start that
Yes.
conversation. So that's what this process is gonna
Yes,
garner.
that's the first, I believe that was the first choice
Yeah.
with the group looking at the alternative use of space and bringing in the municipal side as well.
There's also, I don't want to get too grandiose here, but there's also an opportunity here for school parents to be supportive of seniors moving into a school that keeps their local school open And maybe some of the generational divide that we see at the ballot box can be somewhat, maybe we start to calm that down. I don't know if that part's true, but I do know that you've got, space I'm in a building that I'm told was built in 1950s to survive. To survive one or 2 years.
Exactly.
I mean, it was one, so since 1952, you've just been on like overtime here. And,
Well, we used to go, that used to be our school, until the new addition renovation project finished up in the early 90s.
Happy to let you have it.
Brian,
I
not to kind of get off track, but I know there's a need for the senior center, but I believe there's a greater need for public safety between Menching Space, up at Green Hill, and just the
I got more
police in the temporary building.
That's right, but I got more flexibility with senior center than I do with.
Well, I didn't know if you had a
Lots
plan,
of
and
times
that was part
fire
of.
gets placed because of where fires are happening. So there's a geolocator for fire stations that, you go through a formula. I don't know, I don't understand the formula, but I know they have one. Police are on patrol, so it's not quite as sensitive, but I agree, but we need all of it. So if I can get a
But I
piece.
didn't know if you had a plan, a multi-step plan or something towards that goal. or-
In the last 2 months, I really haven't had that opportunity, but I'm looking forward to it.
One thing I can throw out, I know that Hubbardston's in the process of updating their master plan. I think you're doing a couple chapters at a time.
Right now.
Yeah, are you doing town municipal
But
facilities?
we're meeting right now. Yeah, you're here.
Yeah. Are you doing I know you're doing economic development, are you doing municipal facilities too? Facilities and services?
7,
Yeah.
9 chapters.
9 chapters, yeah, I would be guessing.
But that would certainly fall under those particular chapters as well, and then Brian could say, well, according to our master plan, yeah, this is what our needs are, this is what have been identified, and this is a public supporting that as well. I mean, that's one of the big things about having a master plan.
So I think
And a
at
recent
MPC,
master plan.
so what my colleagues will do is we'll work
Yeah,
on this
John's
project.
in Hubbardston.
And John's in the planning board tonight, right?
That's why he's not here.
One of my right arms, exactly. So we'll look at, the school facility, the facilities issue that you would put in under our master plan in the context of this study, and try to get some of those questions answered now, which helps us later, if we get engaged by the town of Hubbardston to do all the master plans. So when we do the facilities chapter, we're a step ahead.
And so that's what you've been doing all 5 months.
Yes. And one other item I would like to throw out there, I believe 3 of the communities, I believe Hubbardston's a green community, designated as a green community. So there's funding available for windows insulation with the green community designation. Hardwick's done very well with it, Barry's done very well, and I believe New Braintree is going to be submitting their application this year as well. In many communities at one point, the schools were not included in those green communities applications for one reason or the other. I think, just my own personal opinion, why aren't there, or could there be some type of separate program or a phase 2 to bring all of those school facilities into the green community program?
Janet, I do have an update on that, because you've got it. That was something that when Hardwick was designated, right, and you come up with your plan.
Yep.
So then when I kind of took that ball and started running with it, we completed one round, went for the competitive round. But I noticed that the Hardwick Elementary School had not been included, and I'm certain that there's a lot of savings that could be done there. Reached out to DOER. What they said was that it's because we're in a school district. Well, I have to tell you, it didn't make sense. Hardwick owns their school, we pay the capital expenses on that school, it didn't make sense. I have to tell you that this next round, we had a conference call, and I just said, Jim Barry, before you go, one more time, I'm going to put it out there to you, and they've agreed. So I have a meeting with the principal next week to be able to coordinate an energy audit, but they will allow that.
So you didn't have to file any extra paperwork, or?
Well, what we're doing is we will amend our original plan.
Yep.
So there will be a little bit of paperwork to do, and we have to get that audit done. So we're going to start that coordination and that type of thing, and go from there. But they caved, so,
Good.
yeah.
So that's an opportunity for updating and upgrading some of the school buildings as well. OCAM, I don't think there's any movement from OCAM on green community designation. It happens every year. but certainly it's a great program. One of the challenges way back with becoming a green community was the town had to approve the stretch code, which through the building. So the building code is a stretch from the old building code to this new Green Community Act, where everything had to be more energy efficient, and a lot of the builders in town voiced they were not pleased with that because of the additional cost associated with it. They only had to buy certain things. Well, basically with the new building code, it's the same, and once the newest building code is introduced, there's no longer a stretch. The newest building code will be more stringent than the Green Community Building Code, so I would expect that to probably disappear at some point. But those opportunities exist. It's great to hear from Teresa. So just some of these discussions, you throw things out and to learn what you could do, what opportunities exist, what your neighbors are doing that you might not even realize your neighbors are doing. Build off of all of those ideas.
Jan, just quick, this is kind of off topic, but there's a Mass Greens Career Conference tomorrow. I didn't know if you were aware of that, but there is some municipal and school sides to the conference. I'm sure it's
Anyone know that?
being held at our building at Mass Wildlife, but we're not putting it
Oh, I
on.
love that building.
We do.
That's like my favorite place.
Yep.
Only because it's got a trout.
Probably getting, the pond's a little dirty right now, but I was wondering, and I was actually gonna look and see if any of you were there, because there is schools of sustainability, like a learning and career path, but there is also like clean energy and state municipal government, and I can forward this email.
Could
I
you?
don't know if you could share it tomorrow,
I
but-
may have, and I'll like pass it along, but
Yeah.
no, if you could send that to me, that would be great.
I don't think this year, but I think in the past we've been asked to, kind of just set up kind of be present as like it's green careers, so it's like planning is a career, so it's, a lot of students from like some of the local, the high schools even, some of the community colleges, the
There's
local
three
colleges.
components that they listed, they sent us as if we want to attend. So there is a clean energy and government
Yeah, absolutely.
piece to it, so I was wondering if.
Do you have my email? Yeah, you email to me.
Yeah, I probably should have done that earlier, but.
I guess, Janet, what's the next step and what can we do to you?
So we're going to be reaching out to the communities to set up initial meetings. We'll be reaching out to the schools to set up initial meetings as well. I mean, we have until the end of May. I know we're going to have a really nice winter. It's going to be 70 every day, so we don't have to worry about any type of ice storms or cancellations. That's what I've heard anyway.
I knew we hired the right.
I think we can talk about that at that meeting tomorrow, the nice weather.
The
So-
other thing about the deadline, I was thinking when you mentioned the May deadline, last April, I got a call from Mrs. Hendrick in Ocam about there were decisions that needed to be made about the finance committees and all the communities. And so I think that there's going to be an immediacy there. And I don't know if any of the communities, finance committees are up and running yet, but they're going to be starting shortly, I'm sure, in terms of budget planning. So if things start to clarify and I don't know if they will, but if things start to clarify in February, March, it'll give these people that have to work with the numbers a chance before town meeting to at least go in with a realistic picture of what they need to present.
Yes. So I think with that as well, I don't believe when I sent the email to the communities that I included the scope with that, but I think it's important for them to see that and the different steps and what we're trying to achieve through this and the end result type of thing. Set up those initial meetings and get out there. Because we're going through the winter season. You do have the budget, absolutely. You're gonna have town meetings in May as well. And we don't wanna be finishing this on May 30th. I mean, we can't. So there's a lot of work to be done, so we will be starting right away. We will be updating the task force as well on a monthly basis. You still will continue to meet monthly, or
Yes.
does that change at all?
Not unless you wanted to.
We usually go the first week of the month, usually on
Usually on a Wednesday.
on
So
Wednesdays.
my next challenge is to sit down and take those overlapping components and try and be as efficient with those meetings. And so my hope is to kind of lay out a little bit of a schedule of those meetings, meeting with the town administrators, meeting with the school districts, meeting, and to, really get more details in terms of when those are, we're gonna be out here all the time, and so we're gonna need that office space in Hubbardston.
Prime space.
Our satellite office out here.
We definitely could provide you with satellite space if you need it in this area.
And you have internet.
And we do have internet, and it works most of the time.
And we need space too, don't we?
Well, we have Monday, November 1st, I'm sorry, Wednesday, November 1st, and then we have Wednesday, November 8th.
The 8th is not a good week because we already have 2 or 3 meetings and school committee meetings.
So the first,
And the first two,
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So we're gonna be looking at your schedules already and trying to build on those
yeah,
and
well,
use those. Exactly.
All right, so what are, so in the middle there, you've got, sorry, Dave, I just want to ask a real quick question as we're all sort of looking at this. What are there action items for us, like leaving this meeting? Relative to like contacts and because we're all gonna just go away, right? So,
No,
You're lucky that Brian's here.
yeah,
Teresa's here because they're pretty much our point of contacts in quite a few communities. OCAM, I would ask that you
Barry
go
came in
back.
a little late.
Yep.
He's back there.
Oh, I knew he was coming late. He already told me that. So, yeah, so with Barry, going through Andrew, trying to coordinate certain things. With OCAM, because there isn't, oh no, you do have, I'm sorry,
Steve's
you
here.
do have a select, I'm still thinking your school committee, Steve, sorry about that. So to go back to your board and just make them aware of what's going to be going on, and part of that, sending out the scope as well. And we're gonna try to coordinate those meetings. Joe, through New Braintree, coordinating them. Katie wasn't here, but she's well aware of it. I know Joe updates the boards on those. So just coordinating those meetings, bring them back to the communities, let them know what's going on, if they're not well represented here.
We will put together a letter that kind of explains some of this, send it out to the town administrators and to you guys, so that you have a sense of what's coming, and you can share that, more broadly. So you have a sense of kind of the timing of this, that people are gonna expect a phone call from Tracy Connor and Janet or Chris, and we've got a pretty, we have a team of about 6, and we'll share those names so you'll know who's coming. Obviously. But
Which
we'll,
most of you know us, basically.
and Janet has pointed out that we're gonna try and set up a website so that there will be, we'll put this stuff up there so that this is gonna be a pretty fluid project. Things are changing pretty rapidly, so, if somebody forgets a meeting date, we'll try and have all those stuff, all that kind of on one simple location.
A question, so are you going to post the agenda of your meetings with the different town numbers so that we can see?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, okay.
Absolutely. So that you guys, even if it's down to
It'll be
the,
very transparent.
Okay, all right.
Transparent.
How are we going to know what the website?
We'll send it out, and we'll contact Ellie and Brad as well to try to get that out through the school newsletters. We will use any resource we can to get the information out.
And Jessica, would you be able to send it to us? Thank you.
So I have a question. So some of the things, trying to coordinate this, and I know sometimes boards only meet once a month. We know when all the planning boards meet. In fact, there's a couple of them meeting right now. They meet the first Wednesday of the month, unfortunately. But staff meetings, I guess, to ask, is it okay to meet with the staff? And when do they meet? So I don't need to know right now, but those are the questions that we'll be sending out as trying to coordinate this, and to just give them a heads up of what we're doing. It may not be immediate, it might be actually meet with you, meet with town officials, and we'll have a better idea of what we'll say and what we'll ask and where we're kind of going with it. Also with the students. I would love to meet with the students. It's important to hear that voice. They have a whole different perspective.
They're relatively captive, so they're at your disposal.
So we're staff and stuff.
They might be the calmest ones, right?
I would tell you that the quality staff would make themselves available whether it was a meeting night or day or not. They would be available.
Your PAC groups, your PTOs, that type of thing. So we'll be reaching out. If we can't find it, if we're not trolling on Facebook or whatever as came up in the last meeting, we'll reach out to all of you, because I might be able to just ask Jess 5 things and she can give it to me rather than sending it to everybody. and getting that information eventually, or something like that. So those are our next steps.
I just want to go, I don't want anybody to leave before we send a lot of this, especially the task force and what your schedule and your team jam is. But I'm looking at Thursday, the 2nd of November. How does that work?
What time?
I'm not available, you're not available.
There's 4 of us going to that conference.
There's 4 guys.
Okay, so.
Can you stay with the Monday, Wednesday, that doesn't work?
Mondays are.
Monday, select
Yes.
Yeah.
You
October
want us to stay
25th?
away from Mondays and Wednesdays?
No, no,
I
no.
was hoping full ones.
October 25th, Dan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's, yeah, that's
So-
like what, 3 weeks ago?
Two
So- No, that would be okay.
3 weeks is better than.
I would almost rather do that than go 6 weeks.
Or 5, yeah, I would prefer the earlier end of things.
Do we have anything then?
Yes.
On the 25th?
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a.
October 25th.
One of us will be here.
Yeah, we have enough
Yeah, the
of a team, we'll have somebody here.
I don't have anything, but
So
that's fine.
the 25th at 6, is that good for everybody?
Yep.
All right.
Thank you all.
May I see Steve Labar and Claire Edmund before you?
All right, so school committee, I need.
That sounds like a class.
Motion to adjourn.
I got nervous.
Sure.